We've had a lot of questions come up around what the differences are between CloudTruth and HashiCorp Consul. So I would like to take a few minutes here to actually go ahead and explain that. Now, when we're thinking about HashiCorp Consul, I want you to think about a service mesh. And service meshes have actually been around for a while. Although what I will say is I feel like Kubernetes has kind of made it, a little bit more popular again. But we've always had service mesh, and service mesh works, inside of Kubernetes, and it works just in a data center. So it essentially secures communication between services. And what does that mean? Well, let's, go with the Kubernetes example. Pod communication occurs, but it's unencrypted. So the east-west traffic going between pods is all unencrypted. A service mesh like HashiCorp Consul helps encrypt that traffic. Not only that, and I would say, security is a big piece of it, but it's super helpful when it comes to network troubleshooting. So for example, latency issues. I've seen a ton of people use HashiCorp Consul and just service mesh in general to troubleshoot what's happening with, services that are slow or having latency issues, or customers are complaining about latency issues, etc. And from a pure, application health perspective, it's going to give you some insights on if an application is working as you're expecting. So let's take a look at what the architecture looks like from a Kubernetes standpoint. Now, as you can see, we have 3 console servers, and they're essentially running on different Kubernetes worker nodes. Now, this is one way to do it. Another way to do it is you can deploy console via, a Kubernetes deployment and have it running as pods throughout your cluster. And you can even deploy it in a data center. So you can have console running inside of your data center. That way, the applications that are running in your data center that aren't even containerized can still have the same benefits as a service mesh. Because remember, service mesh has been around, way longer than Kubernetes has been around. So encrypting the traffic between applications and services, you can absolutely do that even outside of a data center. Now, if you've already worked with CloudTruth, or if you've kind of heard about it already, you can, probably already tell that service mesh is way different. Service mesh is really around the idea of encrypting services, encrypting applications, helping with that east-west traffic and troubleshooting. Whereas CloudTruth is really, when it comes to Kubernetes, a key value pair store for your Kubernetes manifests. You can also store manifests as templates inside of CloudTruth. That way, you can have literally one Kubernetes manifest for every environment: dev, staging, UAT, prod, QA, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're calling it in your environment. You can have one manifest and then inject those parameters in at runtime. So for example, let's say you have a Kubernetes manifest, and in the dev environment, you only want one replica running for your pod, but in production, you want 5. Well, what would you have to do? You'd probably have to do something like, have multiple value files or environment files, or maybe you might even have to have multiple Kubernetes manifests doing the same thing, but just with that little change for the replicas. But with CloudTruth, you don't have to worry about that. Really, all you're worried about is you have one template, which is a Kubernetes manifest, and then you're injecting those values in at runtime with CloudTruth parameters. Okay, now this is just a little screenshot here of what parameters look like. So let's say, we're thinking about replicas again. Let's just go with that because we've already been talking about it. I have 3 replicas here for my environment value, but this is for my default. I can set up environment values for dev, staging, prod, and they can all have different values. And then at that point, I can pass them in via a template for each environment. That way, I only have to worry about one single Kubernetes manifest. I don't have to worry about multiple Kubernetes manifests, and I don't have to worry about multiple environment variable files or, value.yaml files, anything like that. Literally one central location to not only store templates like your Kubernetes manifest, but to store the values that go inside of them.